Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving back into some entitled people stories. Today we're seeing entitlement get shut down on 3 different battlefields. In one, a new girlfriend demands instant family bonding and free babysitting. In another, a coworker quietly steals a fixed chair and learns a petty lesson. And in the last, an HOA makes the catastrophic mistake of selling a deployed soldier's home. Here we go. My brother's new girlfriend says I'm cold to her kids and demands I host playdates without her. I, 32-year-old female, have 2 sons with my husband, a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old. I obviously love my kids, but I don't really like other kids, especially kids I don't know well. I'm just not the maternal type that'll want to interact with other kids or find them cute or whatever. My brother's been dating his girlfriend, Natalie, 31-year-old female, and she has 2 kids as well, 7-year-old male, 5-year-old female. When we first met Natalie, she seemed excited that I have kids and started planning how our kids will bond and play together. This didn't happen, and the main reason is the age difference. Again, my kids are 3 years old and 10 months. I don't know how she imagined that her 7-year-old will bond so well with a baby or someone 4 years younger than him. Her 5-year-old daughter is a different situation. She's very rowdy, so my oldest avoids her at all costs when we meet during family functions or whatever. Despite our kids clearly not blending well, I would say we were nice towards Natalie and her kids. Last Christmas, for example, the first Christmas since they got together, we gave gifts to her kids when we met at my parents' place for dinner, and I thought that was enough. However, Natalie decided to confront me on things I apparently did wrong and hurt her feelings. She mentioned I do not show a special interest in her kids that'll potentially become my niece and nephew in the future. I refuse to have her kids over at my place for playdates without her being present. To be clear, I'm okay with hosting her, my brother, and her kids for a dinner or something. I refuse to make my son like her daughter. I am cold towards her kids. I explained to her that I can't and will not force my kids to play or be friends with anyone. I also said that I'm not comfortable having her kids in my house without her present. I don't know her kids that well. I have no idea how they behave outside of the few family settings that we've all attended, and I don't want to be responsible for 2 stranger kids in my house. On the coldness side, I explained to her that I am not cold on purpose, but this is how I am as a person. I'm not a kid fan. I'm not overly maternal, and I simply don't feel like being overly excited over kids. She said that this is not true because she saw that I'm everything I claim not to be with my kids. Well, yes, because they are my own children. She also claims that everyone's been excluding her children. When I asked her how, she gave the same examples from above and claimed that my parents are more affectionate towards my kids. Yes, again, because they are their grandkids. In the end, we're not getting anywhere, so I told her, look, Natalie, you started dating my brother 1 year ago. My parents and I had a couple of meetings with you and your kids, and everyone was nice to all of you. I don't know what your problem is, but you need to speak to my brother. No one's excluding your kids, but you can't expect us to treat your kids the same as mine. This is never going to happen. My kids are my kids. They don't owe anything to yours, and you are not entitled to anything from us. Please solve this issue with my brother. Your statement here is the absolute unvarnished truth. She's seeking validation and forced bonding, not understanding that familial love is earned through time and relationship, not mandated by a new romance. You put the responsibility back where it belongs, between her and your brother. That's not harsh. It's the only logical move. My brother apologized for her and mentioned to me she sounded like a mad woman focused on the absurd differences she sees when it comes to our kids. He agrees our parents are not doing anything wrong and that I'm not doing anything wrong. He knows me and is aware I'm not doing anything on purpose. He said that Natalie's been crying after our discussion, and while he agrees with me, he asked me if I can try to be more empathetic towards her feelings. I told him that I am polite to her, but she seems manipulative, and if she doesn't want to hear the truth, she should not start this kind of discussion with me. My brother's lost. He doesn't know how to manage this madness, and I'm honestly confused if I did anything wrong when speaking to her. And our second story. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the pettiest. I fixed a chair, she took it, so I unfixed it. I work night shift, and anyone who's done nights knows there's a long dead stretch where absolutely nothing happens. From about 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., it's quiet, lights are dim, and as long as everything's handled, nobody cares if you grab a nap. We're adults, the work gets done, and everyone has their own unspoken routine. Over time, everyone sort of claims a spot, not officially, not written anywhere, just a place where you go when it's time to shut your eyes for a bit. Mine was this one chair tucked out of the way that nobody else touched. The reason nobody touched it was simple. It didn't recline properly. The back would stop halfway and dump you forward like a betrayal in furniture form. I didn't mind because I'd figured out how to make it comfortable enough, but eventually I got annoyed and actually looked up how to fix it. Took me maybe 10 minutes and a bit of trial and error, but suddenly the chair reclined like it was supposed to. It was perfect. Quiet corner, comfortable, and still ignored by everyone else. Or so I thought. Next shift I come in and there's a bag and a blanket draped over my chair. Not near it, not on the floor, on it. I pause for a second, genuinely confused, and then my coworker walks over. I asked pretty casually, "Hey, when are you leaving this spot?" I honestly wasn't even thinking she was trying to sleep there. She just looks at me and goes, "Oh, I'm just watching a movie." No explanation, no hesitation, like this had always been her chair. I didn't feel like starting drama, so I shrugged, found another spot, and figured it was a one-off. It wasn't. The next night, same setup. Her bag, her blanket, same chair. I started to get that slow, simmering irritation that builds when someone keeps pushing a boundary without ever acknowledging it. By the third night in a row, it was obvious she decided that since the chair worked now, it was hers. No conversation, no asking, just occupation. I remember thinking, wow, so that's how we're doing this now. So I stopped being nice about it. Before her next shift, I came in a little early, just enough time. I walked straight to the chair, reached underneath, and quietly removed the cord I'd used to fix the reclining mechanism. Then I set it back into its original upright, useless position. After that, I went and sat myself down in her old spot, the one she'd abandoned the second she found something better, and made myself comfortable. When she came in and saw me sitting there, she hesitated. Then she walked over to the chair she'd taken from me, dropped her bag, and tried to recline it. Nothing happened. She pushed again, still nothing. I didn't even look at her. After a moment, she asked, "Hey, is this chair broken?" I said, "Yeah, it doesn't recline, right? That's why nobody uses it." She stood there for a second, clearly annoyed, then glanced at me in her old spot. "So where am I supposed to sit?" she asked. I shrugged and said, "I don't know. This is where I usually sit." That exchange is perfect. You answered her two questions with pure, unfiltered, unemotional facts. You didn't give her a solution or an apology. You just stated the reality she'd created. The chair's broken and her old spot is taken. It forced her to confront the direct consequence of her own actions without giving her an argument to latch onto. From that night on, I made it a point to come in early every time we worked together. Not dramatically early, just enough to beat her to her own old spot. She never touched my chair again. The cord stayed out, the chair stayed useless, and somehow, miraculously, everyone went back to using the spots they'd always used before. Funny how that works. And our next story. My private driveway isn't a public road. Before anyone jumps to conclusions about speed, danger, or public roads, it's important to set the scene properly. What I'm talking about is not a street, not a shared access road, and not anything remotely open to the public. This is a gated, fenced, clearly posted private driveway that runs alongside a highway for several miles before turning inward toward my house. The only way anyone could access it without permission would be to break through a locked gate and trespass on land that's unmistakably marked as private property. The driveway itself is unusual, I'll admit. It parallels the highway for roughly 4 miles, gradually drifting farther away before cutting uphill toward my house. From the road, it might look like some sort of service lane if you don't bother to look closely, but the gate, signage, fencing, and lack of any public access make its status very clear. I pay taxes on every inch of it, maintain it myself, and have the paperwork to prove it. I'm a car guy, always have been. I build my own cars, swap engines, tune setups, and take them to the drag strip when they're ready. Because of that, I'm obsessive about safety. Roll cages, harnesses, helmets, fire suppression, the whole checklist. I don't street race, I don't test cars on public roads, and I don't endanger random people just to hear an engine scream. That's exactly why I use my own driveway. It's long, straight, private, and completely controlled. No cross traffic, no pedestrians, no surprise vehicles. Before I ever take a car to the strip, I use the driveway to work out issues, make sure the car tracks straight, and confirm that nothing's going to fail under load. It's the safest possible place for that kind of testing. On this particular night, I was out enjoying a newly broken-in engine swap. Nothing fancy, nothing reckless in context, just a few controlled runs back and forth to feel how the car behaved. I'd already done 6 or 7 passes, everything was smooth, and I was cooling the car down between runs like I always do. Then on one of the returns, I noticed flashing lights near the gate at the far end of the driveway. There was a police cruiser sitting outside the locked gate, lights on, engine running. That alone confused me because the gate is not subtle, it's metal, padlocked, and flanked by large private property, no trespassing signs. Still, I slowed down, rolled toward the gate, and stopped well short of it. The officer immediately started waving for me to come closer. I told him I'd be right back and needed to grab the key for the gate so I could open it properly. He snapped back that I needed to stay exactly where I was. Fine, I stayed put, engine off, hands visible, waiting to find out why he was even there. Without any explanation, he demanded my license, registration, and proof of insurance. I told him calmly that I didn't have any of that on me and explained why. The car wasn't registered or insured because it wasn't a street car. It gets trailered to and from the track and doesn't touch public roads. I was upfront, not argumentative, and expected that to be the end of it. Instead, he started running my name through the system using my date of birth and address. Then he told me I was being stopped for reckless driving and claimed he had me clocked at 162 miles per hour using laser. That's when I finally asked the obvious question, how exactly could I be charged with reckless driving on private property behind a locked gate on land that he wasn't even allowed to enter? That question didn't go over well. He immediately changed tone and started warning me about jail, obstruction, and making things worse for myself. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't being disrespectful, and I wasn't refusing to cooperate. I was simply pointing out that this wasn't a public road and that reckless driving laws apply to public roadways. For nearly 20 minutes, we stood there while he lectured me about speed and safety as if I were doing donuts in a school zone. The entire time, he remained outside the gate. He never unlocked it, never stepped onto the property, and never verified where the driveway actually led. Despite that, he eventually handed me a citation for reckless driving and told me to sign it. The ticket itself was a mess. There was no posted speed limit listed because there was no road designation. There was no roadway name. There was no explanation of jurisdiction. It was essentially a fill-in-the-blank accusation slapped onto a piece of paper because he didn't like being questioned. I signed it because I'm not stupid enough to escalate roadside arguments and went back to the house annoyed but confident. I knew exactly where I was, what I was doing, and that nothing about it was illegal. This wasn't a gray area. It was basic property law. When the court date came up, I didn't bring a dramatic argument or emotional appeal. I brought documents. Specifically, I brought a plat map and survey drawing showing the exact boundaries of my property and the full length of the driveway in relation to the highway. It clearly showed the locked gate, the private access, and the fact that the driveway was not a public road or easement. That was all it took. The judge reviewed the map, looked at the citation, and asked whether the officer had ever entered the property. When it was confirmed that he'd remained outside the locked gate the entire time, the judge didn't hesitate. The citation was dismissed on the spot. There was no speech, no warning, and no suggestion that I be careful next time. The case died quietly because it never should have existed in the first place. A private driveway is not a public road, and assumptions don't hold up once paperwork enters the room. What made it worse was learning afterward that the officer had never actually verified jurisdiction at all. He'd seen pavement near a highway, clocked speed, and reacted without confirming where he was or what authority he had. That assumption cost him the case the moment facts replaced instinct. I went back to using my driveway the same way I always had. Same safety precautions, same locked gate, same respect for actual public roads. Nothing about my behavior changed because nothing I had done was wrong to begin with. The only difference was that now I had firsthand proof that some people in authority would rather bluff than admit they overstepped. Luckily, land surveys don't care about bluffs. If you're going to accuse someone of breaking the law, it helps to know whose land you're standing on. If you hadn't had that survey, this could have gone very differently. It's a good reminder that legality doesn't care about vibes or appearances. It cares about lines on a map and who owns them. And our last story. They sold a soldier's home while he was deployed. The court awarded him $1.5 million and dissolved the HOA entirely. Let me start by saying this isn't my story directly. I heard it while working at a veterans hospital, and it made the rounds so many times that certain details got repeated like folklore. Still, every person who told it agreed on the core facts, and if even half of it's true, it's one of the most spectacular HOA self-destructions I've ever heard. The soldier at the center of it lived in a quiet, upscale neighborhood governed by a homeowners association. Nothing flashy, just one of those places with trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, and a board that took itself far too seriously. He owned his house outright, paid his property taxes on time, and never missed an HOA fee. No violations, no warnings, no disputes. By every metric, he was the kind of homeowner HOAs love because he made their lives easy. Then he got deployed. Like a lot of service members, he made arrangements before leaving. Bills were automated, HOA dues were paid, his home was secured. From his end, everything was handled. What he didn't know, because no one told him, was that his HOA board saw his absence as an opportunity. Sometime during his deployment, the HOA claimed there were issues with the property. The specifics were never fully clear, but the accusations ranged from landscaping violations to alleged unpaid fines that no one could ever properly document. Instead of notifying him through proper legal channels, instead of contacting his listed emergency or military contacts, the HOA escalated things internally, and then they did something catastrophically stupid. They seized his home. Not metaphorically, not with paperwork pending, they actually took legal possession of it and sold it while he was overseas, while he was actively deployed, while he was still paying HOA fees the entire time, completely unaware that his own house had been sold out from under him. For over a year, the soldier had no idea. When he finally returned stateside, deployment finished and bags barely unpacked, he went home. Or rather, tried to. What he found instead was someone else living in his house. Different locks, different people, different reality. From what I was told, the shock didn't last long because his chain of command stepped in almost immediately. Once the facts came out, things escalated at a speed the HOA was absolutely not prepared for. Here's the part the HOA apparently didn't understand. When a service member is deployed, there are extremely strong federal protections in place. You can't seize their property, you can't foreclose on them, you can't sell their home. Not banks, not the IRS, and absolutely not an HOA with a clipboard and an inflated sense of authority. The Judge Advocate General's Corps, JAG, got involved fast. The HOA received a formal letter outlining exactly how badly they'd messed up and demanding immediate corrective action. According to the story, the HOA board either ignored the letter or dismissed it as a bluff. That was their final mistake. The soldier, backed by JAG, sued. Once it hit federal court, the situation went from bad to catastrophic for the HOA in record time. The judge didn't just find 1 or 2 violations. The HOA had broken 11 separate federal laws, not technicalities, not gray areas, clear black and white violations of statutes designed specifically to protect deployed service members. The ruling was brutal. The judge ordered immediate restoration of the soldier's home and all personal property taken from it. If any of that property couldn't be returned, federal prosecution would follow. On top of that, the soldier was awarded $1.5 million in damages. This is the moment they truly realized their power wasn't local anymore. They thought they were playing a neighborhood game. They were, in fact, playing against the United States government. The sheer scale of the judgment, not just giving the house back, but a 7-figure penalty, shows how seriously the court took their violation. It wasn't a fine, it was an exorcism. That wasn't the end of it. During the proceedings, it came out that members of the HOA board had personally retained items taken from the house. Furniture, belongings, things that were never theirs to touch, let alone keep. Once that information was on the record, the tone of the case shifted again. The court dissolved the HOA entirely. Not restructured, not fined and warned, dissolved, gone. The board members were forced to sell their own homes as their positions became legally and financially untenable. The neighborhood reverted to non-HOA status by court order. As for the board members themselves, no one at the hospital seemed to know exactly what happened next. Some said they disappeared from the area overnight. Others claimed there were criminal charges and prison time. Whether that part is rumor or fact, I can't say for certain. What everyone agreed on was this: none of them were ever seen in that community again. The soldier got his house back. Every time this story comes up at work, there's a pause at the end. Someone always shakes their head and says something along the lines of, "Imagine thinking you're more powerful than federal law." HOAs tend to forget they exist because homeowners allow them to. This one forgot that soldiers don't stop being protected citizens just because they're serving overseas, and the law reminded them in the most expensive, humiliating way possible. All three stories show the fallout of entitled overreach. The girlfriend learned you can't demand instant family. The coworker found out that claiming a fixed chair unfixes it. But story 3 wins for its sheer legal magnitude. The HOA didn't just lose a case, they were dissolved, fined millions, and ejected from their own community. It's the ultimate lesson that no local power trip is above federal law, especially when it comes to those serving our country. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.